Testing, there we go. While everybody's settling in, I will use the time for some propaganda. I'm Monica Bay, and I'm editor-in-chief of Law Technology News. Law Technology News is for you. And one of the things I constantly preach is that, and I will talk about this when we actually start, but a really, really good way to accelerate your career is to write for LTN. And I'm sure some of you would shudder at the thought, but I do the acquisition and I do the editing, and I'm a really good editor. And it's a painless process. It puts you in a position where you get established as a voice that gets recognized. And when I identify folks that are good writers and have a good voice, you'll see them over and over again. A good example is Casey Flaherty. I asked him to write about his audit, and he's probably written over the last 2 years, I would guess 15 articles for me. All of us who have been in support positions often feel, and I might be over-exaggerating, but it's easy to feel like, you know, there's lawyers, why are we doing this? You know, like how can do I have something to say? You do. And it's really important that the firms begin to realize, and a lot of them are, that just like baseball, it's not always, although it often is, Mr. Jeter who hits the home run. It takes a team, and it takes all members of the team. So if you are interested, it's a very easy process. You just ping me, mbay@alm.com, and I will get back to you. I'll either say yes, no, or maybe, and we go from there, and it's a very simple process. Just out of curiosity, again, I'm waiting for TJ to say we're officially starting. How many of you work in law firm environments? Looks like about 80%. Any vendor environments? Great. Corporate? Government? Non-legal? Great. Did I miss anybody? Okay. And I guess, shall we officially start warming? Okay. So, first thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little old-fashioned social networking. Please, you do not need any device. Turn around and talk to the person who's next to you. Introduce yourself. If you have a card handy, you have it. And you can shout out. And the team do not understate the importance of networking. You never know who you are going to encounter over the course of your career who may come in or out of your career and friends. Okay, that's enough. Truly take advantage of the networking that you can get here at ILTA's conference and at Legal Tech. One thing I have learned in my career, which is amazingly long to me, and in February I marked my 30th year with ALM, which makes me think I must have started at age 2. But over the course of my career, I've been stunned in at least 2 situations where the last person in the world who I would have expected to champion me turned out to be an important mentor and someone who dramatically affected my going up the chain at ALM. So take it seriously, it's really important. Okay, end of lectures. We have an amazing program for you. It's based on TED. We're doing the same TED premise. Each of our panelists are going to have 9 minutes. And the concept, everyone is doing a standalone presentation. Our overarching assignment is what we were calling stealth disruption. And the team is absolutely fabulous. Those of you who've spent more than 2 minutes with me know that I'm dreadfully terrible on names. So I've actually written out the pronunciation, and I'm going to introduce the panel, but they will tell you a little bit more themselves. Speaking first is George Cater. They will tell you who they're from and so forth and so on. Speaking second, in Derek Jeter's position, Wale Elebi. Okay. Batting third is Barris Amor. Yes. In fourth in cleanup is Steve Fletcher. And in the Mariano Rivera position, as he always is on any panel that I am on, George Rodoy is Mariano Rivera and our closer. You can tell I'm somewhat of a baseball fan. But before they get to talk, I hope you will see the write-up that I did in the current issue of LTN. Sorry for all the self-promotion, TJ, but you know me. And we did a full packet on it. Those of you who know me for a while know that I'm absolutely passionate about teams and about recognizing the non-lawyers as important team members, as important as anybody else. And the fact that they don't happen to be lawyers, in my mind, is irrelevant. It doesn't matter whether or not you are the newest secretary or the CEO or the managing partner. Everybody contributes in a law firm environment. I was absolutely outraged. I do not even pretend to be neutral on this, and I wrote a scathing editor's note about burning down the C-suite because the country of Texas has decided to, the state bar has decided to issue an ethics opinion. If you haven't heard about this, get on LTN, we got a whole package for you on it. Forbidding non-lawyers from having the titles officer or principal in their job titles. Duh! Has anybody heard of the C-suite? This is the stupidest, the most demeaning, the most ridiculous, the most mind-boggling ethics opinion that has ever been written on the planet, that, as far as I know of. Immediately after it came out, ILTA and 4 other organizations, ALA, all the acronym organizations, immediately protested and requested that it be reconsidered. This was followed by letters from firms that had Texas presences, and 53, I think it was, law firms, including 24 AmLaw 100, protested this ruling and have demanded that that they revisit it. We immediately went, and just before ILTA, we completed with help from ILTA. We did the AmLaw 100, actually Mark did the 101 that has everybody's title, and in the AmLaw 100. I didn't do an actual count yet, but I would guess that 97 or 98% of Big Law 100s, their top executives are CIOs. And that's not even talking about all the other C things, governance, security, CEO. I put myself, as I write in my thing, I put myself through law school, working my way up the caste system. I started as a temp secretary. As I got into my second year of law school, I got more jobs with more responsibility. But I was quickly obvious that we know that law is a caste system. There is a line, there is a ceiling, and you cannot break it. If you do not have your ticket, you cannot be a lawyer, period. That's fine, we get that. But for entities to say that the teams aren't worthy just defies logic to me. And I find it so incredibly offensive, and I encourage you to send letters, to get your firms involved. This is patently ridiculous. So, we've dedicated LTN for my entire, I've been 16 years the editor-in-chief, and my whole passion, my favorite core group is you sitting right here in this audience, the CEOs, the folks who are involved in this and integrating tech. And many of us saw the panel on Monday, the wonderful keynote speech. And, we're not going backwards, boys and girls. Tech is here and it's not going to go away. So please, please, please be loud, be proud, and fight this thing. I promise you we will follow it every nuance, because You guys are just great, and I just absolutely refuse to sit back and be quiet to this absurdity. So no burning down the C-suite on my march. That's my rant. The first person that I get to bring up is number one. I have to look at my little chart again. Is George Cater. It's all yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So, stealth marketing, or how to trick your attorneys into wanting your technology. So I'd like to start by sharing a quote that I think really adds context to the rest of the conversation that I'm going to share with you today. And I'm going to read it so that I don't butcher it. It's from Terrence Wright. There is a profound difference between selling and marketing. Selling is trying to get people to want what you have. Marketing is trying to have what people want. When you have what people want, it makes selling unnecessary. Isn't that brilliant? I wish I thought of that. I didn't. So in IT, we tend to do a lot of selling, right? We send out packages and we give our attorneys the ability to postpone them because we don't want to cause a reboot at an inopportune time. You know, day one, attorney, postpone. Day two, postpone. Week three, postpone. And then we have to go out and hunt them down and sell them on why they need to upgrade a particular application, right? Another example, mobile device management. So we have some clever attorneys that figured out how to bypass MDM and they hooked into ActiveSync, right? And then we have to hunt them down and explain, listen, when you do this, it violates the requests of our clients, we're gonna have an audit, we're gonna fail, you're gonna lose business. But wouldn't it be great to change that paradigm, to make attorneys come to us for technology, right? To be the cool guy in the Apple store, where they want what you have. So one way to do that is something that I stumbled across earlier this year, totally by accident. So we decided to roll out mobile time entry, right, on iOS and Android devices. And I was really concerned about our testing process. So like most firms, we have a process where, you know, we acquire software and deploy it. And so we have vendor demos, right? And then we have proof of concepts because we don't trust what the vendor said in the demo. Then we go to, you know, our apps team will install and configure it and they'll test it. And then we'll spread it out to the entire IT group, have them bang on it. Then we choose a small office. We'll roll it out there first, right, to kind of mitigate the damage if there's going to be damage. And then we go to general deployment. So for mobile time entry, I had two concerns with that process. The first concern was IT people tend not to bill, right? And so I wasn't going to get any real good feedback from the general IT team. You know, yeah, they're going to find the catastrophic type errors, and we'll fix those, but no constructive feedback. The other problem was our small offices are filled with really nice people, right? And normally that's a good thing, right? They're happy, they don't complain. But when you're pushing out a new product, you want some constructive feedback, and they're really reluctant to give that to us. So I had floated the idea of having an early adopter program for this, just to kind of mitigate the testing worries that I had. And I floated this with one of the chief stakeholders, and she really liked the idea. Fast forward a week, we're at the partnership retreat. And I'm like most IT guys, I'm hanging out in the corner by myself, right? And a partner approaches me. He's like, hey, George, I heard you're having this early adopter program. How do I get in on it? So I get all excited, right? I take out my iPhone, I take the guy's name down, I'm like, oh, this is cool. So I'll have a conversation with him. 5 minutes later, two more attorneys. Hey, George, I hear so-and-so is in this early adopter program. How do we get in? And I swear there must have been 20 to 25 attorneys that approached me that evening trying to get in. It almost became like a competition, right? So they would go back, they'd get in, and they'd scurry back, and look what I'm important, I'm in this program. So all of a sudden, right, that paradigm shifted, and attorneys are actually coming to me. I had something that they wanted. There were a lot of other cool things that came out of an early adopter program. So one, Gmail was in beta for how long? Does anybody know? It actually is out of beta now. 4 years, right? Google got it way before I did, because when you have an early adopter program, expectations are lowered right away. The product doesn't have to be perfect. There's almost an expected partnership there, right? And communication was phenomenal during this process. You know, the feedback was positive. Hey, this tool is great. If it could do this, it would be a life changer for me. But there really was no negativity. And then the whole marketing piece was fantastic. So the people that were in the early adopter program, they became my disciples, my product champions. And they went out to their different offices, and they're in meetings, and they're going to the person next to them. Look what I just did, right? I entered time on my iPhone. You can't do that. And so that really spun that demand. We're actually currently using the same approach for our office for iPad deployment. And I was really scared of this product because, has anyone tried to deploy this? No? There's a real workflow issue between DMS and Word on the iPad and the Mac. I mean, if you have SharePoint as a DMS, you're fine. It was built for that. But if you're an iManage shop or NetDocs or something else, it's a real problem. And I thought I was going to get absolutely slaughtered by our attorneys for this, because it's a really bad process. Early adopter program, no negativity whatsoever, right? They blame Microsoft for it. They don't blame me because the communication is good. And then they came up with other ways to market the product. So maybe it's not the best way to edit documents or to produce documents. But man, in a pinch, when I'm on the road or I'm in the airport and a client sends me a document, it works fantastic. You know, it maintains all the numbering and it maintains all the styles and it works really well. So how do you move to an early adopter program in your own organization? What are some tips? So first, it absolutely has to be optional. The second you mandate, enforce, and mass push something out, it loses its shine. And we actually saw this in the mobile time entry piece a little bit, in that we had one international office, pretty new, and the managing partner had politicked to have the entire office set up. And that was the one area where we didn't have the communication, we didn't have the usage adoption. And in fact, a couple weeks ago, one of the attorneys asked me, how do I get this great product? I saw somebody in LA using it, because they had deleted the email that we sent out, right, which they do a lot. Another tip is, the baseline, they have to want it, right? So it has to be something useful, it has to serve a need, it has to be easy to use. But the secret sauce, the real secret sauce of this, is exclusivity, right? So I want you to think a minute about the Apple Store on iPhone release day, right? People are in line for 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, camping overnight. Why are they there? Yeah, they want iPhones, but they're not in line for 8 hours for that, right? They want iPhones because they want them before their peers, before their friends, before their colleagues, so that they can show off what they have first. And that's a very powerful tool that you can use in your own program. So I hope you found it useful. Thank you.
Don't leave yet. You have to ID yourself.
I tried to escape.
You need to ID yourself. I don't think we get that. I said what firm you were with.
Oh, George Cater, Cypher Shop.
Thank you so much. Okay. Number 2. Wasn't he great? All right. Number 2. We have Allegbe. Be sure you tell them about your firm.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? My name is Wale Allegbe. I'm a manager in the e-discovery and litigation support department at Sullivan & Cromwell. And Monica mentioned team, and it takes a team to get things done in all organizations. We have a really large team, one of the largest in the country, about 50 people in the department. We work for a very large law firm, so trying to get things done or trying to enact change takes a very, very, very long time. Law firms tend to move very slowly. And in talking to Monica and TJ and preparing for this session, and they talked about stealth disruption, I got really excited because it seems like that's what we do on a daily basis at Sullivan. To get things done, we have to take small, calculated steps kind of under the radar until they form into larger initiatives. So I'm going to talk about one of those initiatives today, and it's standardizing your vendors' processes, or finding what the secret sauce is in that ability to standardize those processes. So I imagine, you see what I did there? I imagine that we're all here for a technology conference, and thus we deal with service providers and vendors on a regular basis. I also imagine that if I asked you to name your favorite vendor, you could probably rattle off a couple of names. So what makes a vendor a favorite vendor? Maybe they deliver superior technology. Maybe they deliver excellent customer service. Or perhaps they just deliver cookies and candy. I also imagine that some vendors don't always make it to that favorites list. And why is that? And is there an opportunity for them to make it to that favorites list? I found that vendors are very different from each other, even the ones that are providing similar products or services. Internally, we took a look at all of our service providers over the previous years, and we evaluated the level of success we had on projects with each one. And probably in similar fashion to most of you, we found that we were more successful with some than we were with others. So we looked at the ones that worked, and we wondered why they worked and how they worked, and most importantly, how they worked more consistently. In other words, what's the secret sauce? And before long, we found out that we were part of that secret sauce. We have well-established processes. We are very diligent about tracking and documentation. We're always looking for ways to mitigate risk. And the vendors, the other part of that secret sauce we found was our vendors' ability to be better aligned with us in all of those endeavors. The collaboration we had with those types of vendors seemed to yield more successful projects with fewer mistakes. It's extremely worth it to us to build those types of synergistic relationships with all of our providers. So we started to look for ways that we can do that. We started to imagine an environment of continuous improvement and bolstering those partnerships and relationships with our vendors. Now, without a huge change management endeavor or massive innovation attempt, we launched an initiative that would help us figure out our vendors' processes and be better aligned with them. We called it the Vendor Process Initiative, or VPI. The VPI is an end-to-end evaluation of most of our frequently used vendors, and we assess their data processing workflows, their overall capabilities, hosted data capabilities, their production QC, reporting, audit trail, documentation. The goal is to gain transparency into those overall processes so that we can increase efficiencies, minimize risk, and remove some of those avoidable mistakes. We also identified areas where technology could better serve the goals of the project or of the client. And lastly, we established these standards so as to regulate cost, and more importantly to me, to help build that relationship and that partnership with those vendors. We put a small team together to evaluate all of our providers over the previous year and came up with a short list of the ones that we wanted to work with under VPI. As you can imagine, the list included some of our favorites and some that we had challenges with. And we wanted to explore ways that we can overcome some of those challenges with those types of vendors. The team also put together a very basic end-to-end workflow that we sent to the vendors. The goal here was to see if the vendors could apply their respective workflows to meet the one that we provided to them. And before we knew it, we had a really important and far-reaching initiative on our hands. The buy-in from the vendors was organic, and it led right into building that partnership and that relationship. Again, there wasn't a huge change committee. It was just a few small, calculated steps that we needed to do to develop the VPI. A few things to consider when you're embarking on any stealth disruption initiative. those actions, those steps that you take need to be aligned with the larger goals of the department, of the firm. Otherwise, you'll kind of skate off into Neverland. The second thing is you need a safe environment for not getting it right initially. You need brainstorming is welcome, half-baked ideas are welcome. You need to provide a culture for continuous improvement and a safe environment for people to share ideas. And lastly, you need basically to recognize all of those things. So I encourage you guys to go out and look for ways to imagine ways to have stealth disruptions in your organizations in a way to enact change. Hope you found that useful. Thank you.
I think if people are in the back sitting, we do have a lot of ones closer up if you want. I really resonated to both of the presentations so far. One of the things that I've noticed is more and more and more, I think Mark Zuckerberg said, move fast and break things. And in our shop, I put that up on the wall for a while, but then I took a big black pen and changed it to move fast and don't break things. Because in legal, you really can't break things. It really came to me when we were talking about cybersecurity issues and so forth and so on. But I think the message that I hear from you and many of those is that you have to be able to fail. You have to be, if you can't fail, that's different than breaking. And if you can't fail, if you have a project, especially in IT, it may not take, but look at what happened to Steve Jobs. I mean, he failed as failed you can and came right back up again. And I'm getting interested in venture capitalism and stuff in legal, and you see that over and over and over again. VCs may do 5 or 6 things that bomb completely before they get something that pays off. Okay, number 3, batting third, is Barrister. Please remember to tell them where you work.
Thank you. In fact, I've got a presentation. I figured if you couldn't understand my accent, you can at least read it up on the screen. So let me start. So I'm going to tell you about a project that we've called the Ultimate Open Door Policy. That's me. Can't get myself off the screen. And this is my firm, Cause Chambers Westbound. So we're an Australian-owned firm. We have 4 offices. We have a little over 500 attorneys or lawyers, as we call them. So I'm going to talk about a project that had big change, and it was our Sydney office. We relocated in October last year. So it was a big change. We had to, we moved from this office to this brand new office. It was a fabulous building. But we decided to do bigger change. So we went from this, which is a traditional office layout. So you've got most of the lawyers and partners' offices on the perimeter, and you've got support staff workstations in the middle. So we made it bigger by going to this. So we went to open plan layout, and we got rid of all offices. So not even our partners have an office. So as you can imagine, it was pretty controversial. There was definitely a lot of pushback. And I know that the partners in the other offices were quite relieved that it was Sydney, because they were sure that it would fail, and they were sure that by the time we got to the other office moves, we would revert back to a normal layout. So what did we do? So in October last year, we were the first Australian law firm to move to open and flexible office environment. And I have to say, a lot of our clients were moving to this type of environment anyway. You know, a lot of the big banks, the financial institutions, even some of the big accounting firms. So we designed HFD Square, which is the address, to take advantage of the layout of the building. And also, one of our key objectives is to create a culture of collaboration. And we felt that by designing a new workplace, we could achieve that. So you'll see that this is like a cross-section of the villages. So we have villages which are 3 floors that are joined by a staircase. We have a very high concentration, as you can imagine. I use that word too, Wale. A high concentration of meeting spaces. So we have single-person focus rooms where people can just go away and have a quiet time. We have 4-person meeting rooms. We have 8-person meeting rooms. And we also have open areas where people can just go and collaborate. So the last point there I said to the business, it was a premises project, and I guess this is where the stealth bit comes in. But it was also an opportunity to change the way our people work. So why did we do it? As I said before, we wanted to create a culture of collaboration. We want people to share knowledge. We wanted to get partners in particular who have the most expertise and knowledge to get out and share that with some of the younger lawyers. And as I said here, it supports mentoring, interaction, and we thought faster decision making too. It also gave a strong message to our clients that, you know, we understood the way they worked and that we were also looking for a workplace of the future. And I actually had a CIO from one of our clients call me, and I actually thought it was a cold call. I didn't take it at first, and it was actually his CEO, who was a client of ours, had come and visited our office and gone back and said, I want you to ring their CIO and find out what they did in relation to technology. He loved the workplace so much. The last point too, the environment changes behaviour. We feel that it does. Obviously there was a lot of technology. In fact, we were under an enormous amount of pressure to make sure that people could move around the office, that all of the Wi-Fi, in fact, I think we put so many Wi-Fi points across the floors, you could actually get, I think you could get access on the Sydney Harbour Bridge, but you had to have a password. This is some more technology. We put in a new room booking system so people could easily book rooms. Lots and lots of audio visuals, so people can pick up their laptop, move to a meeting room and just connect to the screen. They can move with their headset and not drop a call if our clients called them. We also did a survey before we moved and after we moved, and we got great feedback in the new environment. So overall, people feel it's an inspiring place to work. People are definitely using the different workspaces, and I know one partner who was very vocal about, well, I'm not even going to come into the office, I'll just work from home. And when I visited, because I'm actually based in Melbourne, when I visited Sydney, I've seen him out on the terrace with his team, because we have a terrace that overlooks the harbour. It's pretty good. He's been out there with his team, with his laptop, working out there. And obviously we've put in a lot of technology. So these are just some old pictures. You know, we're very proud of this workplace. I thought I'd show you some of the different areas. So this is the reception area. As I said before, we have an outdoor terrace. You should be able to see the Sydney Harbour Bridge in the background there. So this terrace overlooks the Sydney Harbour. It's stunning. And lots of people go out there with their laptops and sit in the sunshine and work. And at the bottom of each village, as I said before, we have a village which is 3 floors that are connected. At the bottom of each village, we have this big breakout area. And again, lots of people go there and have, you know, birthday cake or just sit there with the laptop and look out the window. And we have a client cafe that we encourage our staff to use as well. We wanted our staff and our lawyers to mix with our clients, and it's been really successful. And I thought I'd put that one in again because it's got the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't expect I'm going to say y'all. I heard that. Did I say that? I learned that since I've been there. So I'm sure. Y'all. Oh, okay. I don't expect you all to run away and all run out of here and think, right, we're going to go to open plan. It's very disruptive and it's very confronting, and you need to have support from the CEO who had a very clear message that this is a journey for our firm. If you don't want to come on the journey, you can get off the bus. And some people did. But what I do encourage you to do is if you have a project, first of all, I've got to tell you, our other offices are moving to open plan as well. So we're moving Brisbane in October, Melbourne mid next year, and Perth at the end of next year. But what I want you to take away is if you're going to go through big change, if you have a project that has big change, it might be an opportunity to introduce more change, to make it bigger, to change behaviour, or to change the way people work. That's my story. Thank you for listening.
How many folks here are working in open plan facilities now? I think you're going to see more and more of it. About 2 years ago, we did a story about the changing stuff, and I had the opportunity to go to American Express, which is close to our office, and it was just breathtaking. Their corporate counsel had completely gutted their entire room, and they had everything from on demand to steady where you had your same place. And they would encourage people to do at least 2 days work from home. I think we're going to see more and more and more of that as the technology enables it and allows us to have the same access to our tech. I feel like I already have that in terms of I can get exactly the same connectivity at my cottage and my apartment that I can get in my cube, and I actually like it better. Okay, batting full. It's a lecture. Don't forget to tell them who you work for.
I too have pictures, but they aren't of a beautiful office like that, unfortunately. Okay, thank you all for being here, first of all. And my name is Steve Fletcher. I'm the CIO of Parker Poe. We're a 200 attorney firm based in the Carolinas. Our main office is in Charlotte, and we have 4 other offices in the Carolinas. What I want to talk about today is something that I call the reality of perception. And you know, our tagline here was determining you know, what's broke before you fix it. This is a common thing that I think we all face. We're trying to figure out what problems we have in the firm and you know, where those problems are and what, you know, how difficult those problems will be to fix. The other thing we have to determine is something really broke? Because if it's not broken, we shouldn't spend 2 years trying to fix it. And if it is broken, we need to also find out it's broken for whom and how broken is it. So I'm going to walk through a couple brief things. First of all, you know, we sometimes think that everything's cool. Everything is working fine. You know, all of our systems seem to be working properly. You know, we have, maybe we've done a new rollout, we've had new PCs, we've got a great help desk, we've got all kinds of people that are doing amazing projects. We have all new applications. You know, we may have gone through a big project to do matter-centric implementation, like my firm has done over the past several years. And so, you know, things look pretty good. Everything seems to be going, you know, fairly well. But then we have to ask ourselves, sort of, imagine, if you will, what the partners are thinking about things, okay? And we might find that we have a very different view of reality, okay? And one of the things that we have to figure out is what this guy's problem is. We need to find out how many of these guys there are, or how many of those women there are that are screaming at their laptops and their PCs. And we need to figure out really what's behind it all. Because one of the problems that we find is that a lot of times problems will exist and you'll never hear from them. They'll have given up on IT. They'll have said, you know, we talked to the help desk 15 times about this and nothing gets done, so we're not going to call anymore, okay? So this guy is in his office screaming, okay, and we don't even know it because he's not calling us to tell us. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit here today is a way that we have developed a way of dealing with this. And it was interesting because this is one of those things that I love as a CIO, and that is something that costs no money. I don't have to get any outside help for this. I can do it all on my own, and it really has amazing results. And that is basically surveying your firm with respect to technology, service, support, products, etc. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about how we discover reality in building a firm survey. What we do is, first of all, it's an anonymous survey, but we sort of need to know who they are. So we need to know, are they a partner, an associate, a paralegal, or an admin staff? What office do they work in? How long have they been with the firm? We find sometimes that there's a great amount of information when you find out somebody's been with the firm for 3 years, and then we ask them the question, okay, did you come from another law firm? If so, how big was that law firm? If so, how does our technology compare to the place from which you came? And we get a lot of good information, from laterals who've been outside in the world and actually seen what other firms are able to do. So we need to know, who they are. We need to know what they do. So what practice group in particular? Are they a litigator? Are they an M&A attorney? Then we need to find out what works and what doesn't. Okay, so we ask a lot of questions about how often do you have problems with your laptop? How often do you have problems logging in? How often do you have problems working remotely from home or from outside the office? So tell us what works and what doesn't. We get a lot of information on that. We also then, assuming that there are problems, we also ask them, okay, how do we as the IT support group either help or hinder the solving of those problems? How effectively do we respond to your problems? How quickly and efficiently do we solve those problems? Okay, one of the things that we did early on in the survey, and we're coming up on our 10th annual survey this October, one of the things we found out in the beginning was that people were very dissatisfied with the help desk. And so one of the questions on the survey was, how many people, when you call the help desk, get a person on the first try? And the answer back then was almost never. Like 80% of the people said we almost never get somebody on the first try. And so we hired a help desk receptionist the following year. And that help desk receptionist handles all of the calls and handles all of the tracking tickets and all the resolutions and all those kind of things. And what we found tracking the results in the following years were, how often do you get somebody to call, answer the help desk? Almost always 85%, 90%. And there was a corresponding increase in the value of the support that was provided. So just a little thing like that, we were able to determine, and a quick fix, really made a difference. So and then the other thing that we need to do is we need to let them vent. We have a couple questions on the survey that are, one of them is, if you had an IT genie and you had one wish, what would it be? And last year we got 6,000 words of comments from the respondents. And there were a lot of capital letters in bold. There was a little bit of praise here and there. But anyway, we got, when you nail it, when you think about it, and you say, okay, what one thing could we do? I mean, we should be asking all of our, people in our firm that question. And trying to figure out what to do to make things better. So once we've gotten that, basically, we have to ask them to fill it out. Then we have to ask them again to fill it out. We keep our survey open for 2.5 weeks. And we pretty much demand that there's 50 to 60% response, which I think if you have done any surveys in law firms, that's pretty good. And it's certainly a representative sample if you can get 50%. So a lot of times we'll have the managing partner send the email out with a week left, and lo and behold, we get over our 50%. The other thing you need to do is slice and dice the data. So you have to make sure that you've taken a look at the data so that in our case, for example, partners in our Raleigh office that are in the litigation group really feel terrible. They really need these kinds of tools. They need more training. They're happy with help desk, but they're very disappointed with the level of quality products that we have. And you basically slice and dice that. What we do is we put a report together at the end of it. So, and basically is an action plan. So, and we do this by office. So here's the Raleigh office action plan. We've determined from the survey results that the Raleigh users say that the top 3 issues are 1, 2, and 3. And here's a plan on how we're going to deal with that in the coming year. Because if you don't do that, and if you don't then execute the plan, it's going to be impossible for you to get the 50% or 60% response the following year. So what this basically does is, it provides a lot of benefit. It's really amazing. We feel like we get better user satisfaction. The users feel like they have a voice in what we're doing. We actually can look at trends for user satisfaction levels and say, okay, well, when we were rolling out this project, we got terrible support, grades because all the support people were working on the rollout. And so we look at things and we know when it is. And so hopefully, if you do this and you execute this, there's a lot of good that can come of it, and you can have a lot of basis for spending money next year, because we've already seen that the partners want this, and we know that people are satisfied with this, but not with that. And so then the final thing is, what do the partners think now? So your results may vary. Thank you very much.
Last but not least, Mariana.
I was going to say, how you all doing? But much like, Mariana sounding Russian, now it's Russian trying to speak like a native from Nashville, not going to work. Lesson number 1, don't do that. Unlike a baseball game, this session has a limit in time, right? That's why I prefer a different sport. You might have heard of it. It's played on ice with a puck. Well, first let me introduce myself. My name is George Radoy. I am the Director of Research and Information Services at Dentons. So, Research and Information Services, what's that all about? We'll talk about it later. Dentons, as you might have heard, is a newly minted global firm. I believe we are 3rd in the world by size. We have 3,000 attorneys in 60 offices in 52 countries. Like many of the newer firms, we are considering ourselves a Rhine, which basically means that we have different regions that work together in one firm, but have their own kind of functionality to themselves, so which obviously adds the complexity to the way that we operate. So the question I wanted to ask everyone in the remaining time, how useful do you think you are? How important do you think you are to your firm? Do you think you being valued? Do you think you're given it all to be recognized and to take it the distance? Monica mentioned this whole new development in regards to taking away the sea level and all kinds of interesting permutations with the titles that were suggested, and obviously are not what we're looking for. But I am asking a more of a functional question. Sure, all of us have an operational role, right? I mean, we wouldn't be working for the firm that we are if we didn't. But how much do you contribute to the firm's strategy? How much do you contribute to the firm's innovation? How helpful you are to realize that very competitive nature of the firm itself, how well it delivers, how far it can take it. So the question that I kept asking myself, what is the key to that, Al? How do you make yourself the most useful to your firm? How do you make yourself the intangible that the firm cannot function without? And I think the answer is data, it's information, right? I'm going to tell you something you already knew. Information is a key. If we boil down what the lawyers do on a daily basis, they deal with information. They research it. They put it together. They create a legal argument. They deliver it. It's the information and it's the data that has to do with the knowledge, with your client's data, with your own data, with everything that we live in and day out. Yes, I'm talking about the big data and data analytics, and I realize that much like disruptions and disruptive technologies, those terms are very much overused. But if you think about it, and you think what's important to your firm, I think that becomes a key. I mean, that's what we deal with as technologists, as people that deliver services to help attorneys make their case and win their case. I can tell you, at some point in my career, I kind of gave up on that notion. I looked around, and when I was preaching the very nature of big data and sort of data analytics, the whole concept of knowledge management and anything that helps the lawyers to be better lawyers. And I wouldn't mind telling you, I had a lot of blank stares. And I had a lot of those, oh, we've heard it all before. It's something that everybody wants. Nobody that ever want to pay for it. It's impossible to deliver it. I can tell you that when I took my hiatus from the law firms and went and worked on the corporate side as a consultant, I ended up working in a very interesting place. I worked for American Express, and not for a general counsel's office, but much deeper on the data side. The department was called Risk and Information Management. Those are the folks that were trying to figure out how is the alignment between the data that's being generated by a company as big as Amex. Imagine thousands of transactions per second, each swipe of a card, each transaction that took place. They were trying to figure out how to build marketing for the company around those type of transactions, how to focus on things that are vital to the success of the company itself. And I can tell you that by working with those professionals on the Amex side, I'm now fully confident that the big data and the data analytics is really an important part of any business. Much like the folks that I worked with, they were trying to figure out how to focus on the data that they were receiving. They were also trying to figure out how to interpret it. They were trying to figure out how to properly apply it. They were trying to figure out how to make every transaction that took place by somebody swiping a card through the reader to get a good understanding for a company's direction, for their ability to compete with the other companies, and come up with the innovation that would make them more successful than any other company. Well, guess what? 3 years later, I find myself back in the law firm environment. I'm happy to be back. And I'm also happy to tell you that the big data and the data analytics are not just the words. They really are functions that help your firm succeed in every possible way. And my opinion is that regardless of what you do for your firm, you should make it your business. Monica said, do not break things. I agree with that. But stick your nose into things maybe that it doesn't belong. I mean, look outside of your box. Look around. Make it a disruptive stealth technology. Make it a disruptive anything. You know, look how what you do and what you contributes to the overall success of your firm. Look into ways that data is being managed. Look into ways that that particular data management in reporting and otherwise is delivered to the attorneys. And make it a part of the presentation that the firm makes to their clients. At the end of the day, that's a vital opportunity to assure that the competitive intelligence is properly there, that the business development is supported by the delivery of the actual data. The big data might be just words, but at the end of the day, the analysis of the data that the firm handles every day, in my opinion, is a key to success of your firm and by extension, your success. Thank you.
We actually have a couple minutes if you have some questions, and we can be pretty stealth on this. I'll give TJ the mic, and that way we can get the panelists. So who's got the first question? Gentleman in blue. I'll repeat it. Oh, you've got the mic coming. Okay. Is that not on? Okay, just speak.
Testing.
Okay, you got it. You got it.
I wanted to ask our second speaker, excuse me, yes, no, our second speaker, sorry if I kill your name, Wale. So I work for a vendor, and I cued in the minute you said, hey, we're mapping their processes. Very interested, can you give us an example of a type of process you mapped with your vendor in order to enhance your relationships?
Why don't we get the panel to just come on up, and that'll be the easiest way to do the questions. Come on all up, everybody up. Go for it, Wally. Oops, don't trip.
There's an extra step there. So we take a look at our vendors' overall processes from end to end. I work in e-discovery and litigation support, so we typically look at data processing, what technology is used. Simply, to answer your question, simple thing like exceptions handling. Where does that happen in the process? Does it happen while you're processing the data? Does it happen, after the data's up in a database for review? Things like that, little quirks that feed into how we operate in ways to mitigate risk, to make sure that we're better aligned with the vendors.
Those technology processes relative to the work that they're doing for you as opposed to like their business process.
Correct.
Thank you.
Another one? Oh, come on, we're disruptive. Somebody's got to have a question. All right, then I'll ask one. I'll ask all 5 of you. Give us an example of something that you thought might have been a failure at first, but ended up being a success. And you can grab the mic. Is that our other mic? Or here, just take my mic. Who wants to go first? Okay. Molly?
Sure. So I guess that it relates to a different initiative. So in managing, I manage the project management team for our department. And initially, each project manager kind of worked individually, worked on this matter versus that matter. And I suggested working in teams so that we could have more continuity with the client, the attorneys that we're working with, the types of projects, the types of data. And it seemed to be a big failure to start, because how do you get 20 people that are functioning in 20 different directions to now work in groups of 3 or 4? And it seemed to be a catastrophic failure to start until people started seeing the value in, hey, we work on client XYZ's matters and we see all of this data together. Hey, I can take vacation tomorrow and not have to digest a 19-page diatribe on all the matters that I'm working on so that you can cover for me.
Perfect. And you have the other option, if you don't want to answer that question, to what advice would you give our panel? Who wants to go next? Go for it.
So one thing that was a failure early on in my career at Cypher was really our Citrix environment was weak. We had a third-party vendor that managed it, and it wasn't stable, it wasn't performant, and it was getting to the point where our attorneys didn't want to use it anymore. And they would ask for things like, hey, can we use VPN instead? How do we RDP into our machines? And it was just not quitting and stepping back and saying, okay, what's wrong with the situation? And part of it is we didn't have the right people in-house to run that. And once we got the right talent in-house, revamped it, and created a new environment, completely changed everything. And now we actually have people that brag about our Citrix environment and how stable it is. It's great when you're sitting at a table stealthily and an attorney says, I've never been at a firm where Citrix is this good. And so you just have to keep at it sometimes.
Yeah, I think one of the early on failures that we run into is anything that we do to try to secure the system. We put in mobile device management and got all kinds of flack for that. We have WebSense that, if somebody is opening up an email and it has a link to a malicious site, then it blocks them. And there's all kinds of, talk about disruption, and it's not stuff at all, it's in our face kind of disruption. But now, after a couple of years of some of these security things that are in place, when a senior partner gets a call from a large bank that represents, a significant chunk of the firm's revenues, and the bank says, we need to see this security policy that you have, they're starting to realize that the kind of things that we were doing wasn't just to be a pain in the ass, it was stuff that we needed to do to protect client information and protect the firm.
Is this one still working? Okay, yeah. Actually, it was our Sydney office move. We thought that it might have been a failure. The COO and myself had sat around saying, is this the mountain we're going to die on? But fortunately it wasn't, and we were under a lot of pressure, but it was such a success that we are going to keep rolling out that open plan.
George, you get the last word.
Thank
Except
you.
I get the last word, but you get the almost last word.
I'm going to continue with the theme of sticking your nose where it doesn't belong. In my early career, I was focusing on litigation practice support, and at some point had an opportunity to get involved with information services. Quite frankly, knew nothing about it. would probably think I'll fail at that, but actually worked out pretty well. So stick your nose into things and don't do it.
Would you please, see, I got them all up on the stage carefully too. Would you please join me in congratulating this wonderful